a wave at Waves of Prayer. It is a congregation I pastor. James is the youth leader here in Elaine. And just repeat after me. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done. On earth as it is in heaven. Thy will be done. Where? Here. When? Now. Where? Eastern Arkansas. When? Now. And God, let us help you make it happen. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Olson. Again, we'd like to thank everyone again for coming. We're going to do a different format in this meeting. We're going to start out with our president and founder, Dr. Calvin King. We'll let everybody know the format that we will be using. If you can, Doc, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Albert. Is the mayor present?
I don't see the mayor. James is here. James, could you come? Dr. Olson had a substitute for the mayor.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James White. I'm the director here at the Elaine Legacy Center. And I would like to thank each and one of y'all for coming out and letting us host this event for
Arkansas.
Yeah. Apparently the mayor couldn't be here, so he on a fire call or something. He just called me and said he couldn't be here, but I just want to welcome each and every one of you here. And thank y'all for letting us host. Also, at the Elaine Legacy Center, we got a museum and stuff uptown on Main Street, so y'all need to check that out while you're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. All right, Dr. King.
All right, Albert, I take it that the county judge is not there either.
No, he is. No, he isn't.
Well, let me also express my appreciation to everyone that's participating with this outreach tri-state summit, and specifically to Dr. Olson and the mayor for your partnership and support in allowing us to and hosting us in the Elaine community. As the cameras was rolling earlier, I noticed a particular sign that's located there at the facility, and it basically said that before 1919, we were a proud landowner people, educators in the area. Now that is in reference to, and this is my assumption, to individuals, those from the past, definitely from 1919 coming forward. You're talking about 100, better than 100 years ago. But also in reference to some of the history there in the Elaine area. And again, my apology to Dr. Olson. We abide by CDC requirements. Unfortunately, I really had planned to be there in person, and there was some personal reasons for that. But unfortunately, I was exposed to COVID-19, and as a result of that, our thing is that you must then isolate and definitely not be in the public. So, and that's what I've been doing. Otherwise, I would be in Elaine, Dr. Olson. And I want to express my appreciation also to Dr. Olson for all the support that she's given over the years, and all of those individuals that are both online and those in person. I'm hopeful that Elaine will give you an example when you talk about the communities and you talk about outreach, the importance of outreach and the fact that we have to touch base at the local level, as what they say, boots on the ground, in an effort to get information out to the public. A little bit about our organization itself. This meeting is being conducted by Arkansas Land and Community Development Corporation. However, Arkansas Land and Community Development Corporation is program service delivery has been around since 1980, and the site where we are located is where the Fargo Agricultural Training School was founded, also back in 1919, and that's why the sign itself was very connecting to me, based on where our site is, where our home base is, and it was founded in 1919 as well by Dr. Floyd Brown. A little personal note behind this, and the other reason, Dr. Olson, and I know you're being a historian, some of the history of my family. My grandfather was originally from the Elaine area, a community called Coffee Creek. My understanding, my uncle's picture is in the museum, but his name was Aaron Hill. Aaron Hill, he was a minister, a school teacher, and of course he was a carpenter, and he was a farmer, as well. My mother is originally from that area. So there's a personal connection between myself and the Elaine community, and a lot of the history with the Elaine community, as well as some of the occurrences that took place when they give reference back to, and they talk about, I'm sure there'll be more talk about it, about the Elaine massacre. Again, Elaine massacre in 1919, Floyd Brown and the founding of the Agricultural Training School in 1919 as well. I'm going to proceed ahead, and Albert said that we're doing this one a little different than what we've done in the past, and we are. My intention was that we would have this more as sort of a roundtable setting, and where we would talk about the various agencies and what those agencies have to offer. I'm going to start off by talking about micro-urban farming. Micro-urban farming, there are great opportunities for that particular occupational area. There may be some of you now that are a part of that. You may not consider yourself as a micro-urban farmer, but you are actually a micro-urban farmer, and you may just call yourself a gardener. If you are a gardener and you want to be classified as a micro-urban farmer, you now have an opportunity to do that. You don't have to farm 100 acres or 200 acres or 300 acres, not even 40 or 50 acres. If you have a half an acre or even a lot, you can become a micro-urban farmer by getting a farm number. A farm number. Now that farm number is very, very important, because in order for you to have access to the USDA resources, such as Natural Resource Conservation Services programs, as well as Farm Service Agency, then you have to have a farm number. In order for you to get a farm number, you would need to go to Farm Service Agency, and that will be on the program side, and apply for a farm number. And that's either if you're in Arkansas, Mississippi, or Tennessee. You can become a farmer even if you are classifying yourself at present as a gardener. And if you do that, you will have access to additional resources that can be very beneficial for you as an urban farmer or as a micro farmer, farming on a few acres, the USDA resources, conservation, as well as farm service agency. The other area I want to talk about briefly is the USDA NRCS conservation resources. And I'm going to go through each particular agencies and some of the things they have to offer, and then we're going to go back to the resource agencies themselves to fill in the details regarding their programs and for specific questions. And some questions I'm sure I will have for them as well. But with the natural
Excuse me, Dr. King.
resources and yes,
Dr. King, Dr. Olson want to say something.
sure, go ahead.
Dr. King, I want to stop you right there because a number of us in the room are really, really interested in the urban micro crop farming. A number of us are either doing it now or want to do it. Tell us more. How can your group help us? What do we have to do? Tell us more. You know, we've never been to that organization with letters we talked about. We don't know what the application is. We're really new and we need your help. So spend a little more time on that micro farming because that's what we really want to know about. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you, Dr. Olson. I'm going to go back. I'll go back to the micro urban farm and give some additional information. We'll talk more about that when we get down to the area with the resource agencies themselves, both NRCS as well as Farm Service Agency. In order for you to get a farm number and you have access to land, and when I say access to land, ownership of land. Now, if you have, I'm going to use a half an acre or acre of land, and you have title ownership to that, then you must show that to Farm Service Agency that you have title ownership of that land and that you want to get a farm number for it. Again, it doesn't have to be 10 acres, 20 acres, it could be 5 acres, whichever. And you find that a lot of times in these small communities or rural areas where people may have been doing back some years ago. I know when I was coming up, we had what you call a truck patch also, although I grew up on a farm and still live on a farm. But that truck patch, if it was 2 acres or 3 acres, that was a part of the overall farming operation. So if you had one of those truck patches living in the E-lane area and say it was an acre or so, if you don't have, and you have title ownership to that, then you can take that proof of ownership to Farm Service Agency and request a farm number. There's the application process you fill out for that. If you need assistance in doing that, we will work directly with you in providing that support assistance to get your application done to get a farm number for your land. If you have land that you are leasing, then again, and there's not a farm number, then you would have to show proof that you have the control and control of that particular property in making an application for the farm number, or ask the landowners themselves to give either a statement of agreement for you to get a farm number, or they go in and get a farm number for the land, and then you have a legal lease agreement for operating or control of that particular piece of land. So we see this a lot in the areas where they are raising vegetables on these smaller plots of land. They do not have access or use any of USDA's program services as a result of that, not having a farm number. They're just not knowledgeable of this process and what the requirements are. So that's the micro urban farm, the number one area that's on your program agenda. How to become a farmer on small scale land ownership. The other thing that I talked about with the program services, and I'm going to go to number 2 now with NRCS, and you have a resource person that's going to be in that will have that discussion when we get to the question and answer period. And I'll have some questions for them, I'm sure myself, and I'm sure Dr. Olson will, that will talk about all of the specific programs that NRCS has available for micro-urban farmers, beginning farmers, any particular farmer or individual who is in the business of farming, be you a small farmer, micro-urban farmer, or a small beginning farmer, or just a general family farmer. They have enormous program services for those individuals. Everything from seed conservation stewardship program, the EQUIP program, and of course a micro-urban farmer also qualify for these programs as well. You can put in a hoop house, an example, under the EQUIP program, irrigation systems for that small scale piece of property. And they have professionals, NRCS does, that will come out, make an assessment, and develop the required and necessary plan that will be implemented on that particular land. And that's with natural resource conservation services, with the micro-urban farmer, beginning farmer, the limited resource farmer as a whole. One of the things that has occurred over the years, and the area that I'm going to give reference to now, there have been 2 things that has actually come out, and you may have heard it on the news, and they don't talk about the specifics, and you may not understand or really, you may not be able to see how it affects you if you fall into this category as a micro-urban farmer, as a landowner. It may be even on the rural business side, and I'm not going to go to the RD portion now, but this is just on the NRCS side. But one is the American Rescue Act. The American Rescue Act has a lot of resources built into it for rural areas, and a lot of resources that applies both for outreach support services for the communities or the various USDA program service delivery area. There are a lot of resources in there, and hopefully they will talk more about it. And when we get to the discussion sessions, what these 2 acts represent. Under the American Rescue Plan itself, now there has been an amendment to that, and that it was folded over into those amendments was into the Inflation Reduction Act. And we'll talk more about that as when we get into the discussion session with the agencies. I know I will have certain questions for them, and you all will have questions, I'm sure, as well. And you may have questions for me as relate to those 2 acts, the American Rescue Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. There are enormous resources that are applied in, or that will be applied in conservation program type of practices. A lot of it has to do with what they call smart agricultural practices, and there's particular program areas as relates to smart agriculture and how you can receive the benefit of any of the programs that will be implemented as a part of the Inflation Reduction Act, as so amended from the American Rescue Plan. Again, two different acts. American Rescue amended into the Inflation Reduction Act plan, but a lot of resource dollars. And the only way that you will benefit, or we will be able to benefit from these resources, that one, we know they exist. And that's why we want to talk about this more, and we'll have other discussions about it as they begin to implement certain phases of it. One of the other areas that is a part of the both the American Rescue Plan itself, on the first act that was passed, was a commission that is called the Equity and Equality Commission. Now, the Equity and Equality Commission, it has been established, that has been implemented, and they have a specific responsibility in reporting back to the Secretary of Agriculture, as well as my assumption they will provide such a report and recommendation back to Congress as well. And hopefully some of those things will become a part of the next Farm Bill recommendations that they will make. And it's really looking at where the deficiencies are as it relates to equity and equality for the underserved communities. Underserved communities, farmers and landowners of color, and other economically disadvantaged individual farmers. Now, again, the Equity and Equality Commission itself, for the most part, is focusing on policies being implemented in an equal and equitable manner. And when you start to talk about equity, that's a really steep hill to climb, because the lack of equity itself exists, particularly with certain segments of the population. The lack of equity now in this next generation, when you go back to 1919, I'm talking about my foreparents, a lot of the lack of equity is a result of inequality in the past. So addressing equality moving forward becomes one issue or approach, but then addressing the area of establishing equity or the issue of equity opportunities for the future will be a little different, I think, for the Equity and Equality Commission. And now this is only Calvin King speaking. You can talk to the commissioners more about that. Dr. Dwayne Goldman, who's from the Jefferson County area. He is the person that is working with that particular commission, along with the Assistant Secretary for USDA. Again, NRCS, they have a number of programs. I do think, I feel myself, and when you just think about it, NRCS is one agency that does provide program service delivery that lends itself to creating equity with underserved communities. EQIP is one example of that. And I'm just going to use, say, 2 acres of land, non-irrigated land that one has ownership of now, and they've been raising vegetable crops on. Once you install irrigation on land, the value changes. Now, in most cases, those programs are 90% cost share, basically meaning 90% of the cost is covered by NRCS. Now, with 90% of the costs covered by NRCS, and I'm going to give another example, with conservation easement. In our county, in Lee County area, and I'm thinking this appraisal price is still the same. The appraisal price for irrigated land is roughly on an average, is roughly $4,500 an acre. But the appraisal price for non-irrigated land is roughly $3,000 an acre. So, there is a $1,500 difference as far as value itself is concerned. So irrigation goes on it and other improvements on that property, you have an added value to that particular land. And if it's, cleared property again, that creates more equity of value to that property and to that particular landowner and that particular farming operation. Those are just some examples with the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And again, and they have a state technical committee that the staff works with, and they have now created a subcommittee, which is an equity and equality equity committee from the technical committee that is focusing on looking at that area of equity and equality and how they can best provide service delivery that provides that opportunity for the underserved segment of our population. So I'm going to move from the NRCS side now, and I'm going to go to air property, where all of these opportunities exist. We know, and I know, in a lot of the communities and a lot of the farm population areas, air property does exist. Air property is a barrier, can be a barrier for you accessing some of these resources. If you are an interest holder in air property, one is that there's a new law now called the Unified Air Property Act that does give some relief or opportunity for families to retain that family farm or that land, are reducing the risk factor in comparison to what it was some 20 years ago. Under that particular act, if you have one dissatisfied heir, one individual that say that they want their interest out of the land, and there may be a distant cousin, and they petition the courts 20 years ago, they force the property sold, it goes to auction, you get roughly some 25% or 33% of what the actual value of that land is in most cases when it would go to court. Again, with the new law, before that property is sold, it would not just go to an auction to be sold or ordered by the courts to be sold. The courts would order that the individual who is dissatisfied and want their interest must first offer their interest at the appraised value to the other interest holders who do not want to sell the property. That's on their property. That's very, very important. If you're involved in air property and someone is either living on that property or if they are using that property, farming it, and the family is okay with that, that's good. But individual heirs should establish appoint an administrator for that air property. I'm the administrator for our air property. Of course, our property and all, my father created a trust, so the assets are in a trust. You don't have to move to that point, but what's very, very important about that, once you establish a administrator, that legal documents say all the heirs, so agree that John Doe serves as the administrator for John A's estate and who these heirs are, then that person can legally sign on their signature will be recognized with that authorization if they sign a lease agreement, if they're leasing the farm out to a farmer, or if they want to go in and get a farm number for that particular land. Then they have the authorization, they can sign the required documents to get a farm number, and they can sign the actual lease agreements. Those are leases, meets all the regulatory requirements as a legal document, and for whoever's operating the land to access it to use other USDA programs. So again, air property. Now, air property also, and I'm going to move back to the equity and equality as well. In most cases, you will find that air property has some of the greatest potential as equity asset holdings. In a lot of cases, air property was left to the children. It's paid for, and it has a certain value to it. Now, that means whenever you are able to establish that administrative authority, put it in an LLC, and that's another process, but we do work with individual families in doing that. It's not a complicated process really, but once you do that, it gives then that family or those individual interest holders in the family a very clear-cut tile ownership position of equity and asset holdings by the family of those individuals. Added value point again, creating equity, and it gives them then more of an opportunity to deal with the issue of equality and access. Equality and access to the program opportunities being made available through the American Recovery Act as well as the Inflation Reduction Act. And there will be other things that I will talk about under the Farm Service Agency program that will also lend itself back to the air property and the importance of having that administrative authority document on air property. Very, very important and crucial to establishing it either as a farm, if you don't have a farm number, also in accessing the various USDA programs and other opportunities on an equality basis when you're dealing with air property. The other area is farm financing and access to USDA resources for financing farming operations as well as micro loan program, micro urban farming, which is under the Farm Service Agency. Farm Service Agency is one of the major lenders. I won't say the largest lender, but one of the major lenders, but particularly for limited resource or smaller family farming operations here in Eastern Arkansas and in the tri-state area. It is really a primary lender in the urban farmers market area. If you want to become a beginning micro-urban farmer and get your farm number, and you would have to have that, on that land, then you would be eligible as a farmer to get a farm loan. Now they have a micro loan up to $50,000 for operating purposes and up to $50,000 for capital investment if you're purchasing land or something of that nature. Up to $400,000 for a regular operating direct loan, and $400,000, and it may be more than that now. We'll get clarity on that from the FSA participants. But with the FFA loan, direct loan program, and then they have the guaranteed loan program. I'm going to say right now, and that means if you have a banker say, well, yeah, I'll make you the loan and I'll get a 90% guarantee on this for added security from Farm Service Agency, so I know we're 100% secure. Let me give you one other example again now when you're dealing with air property. Of course, individuals that are engaged in or they're involved in an air property situation, and you have an individual who want to sell their interest, they don't want to have any part of that estate, of that air property. Farm Service Agency also has a relending program that is being administered to provide finance by a third party, what they call CDFIs, Community Development Finance Institution, and these are banks, such as Southern Bancorp. Southern Bancorp is a CDFI, Community Development Finance Institution. Well, they can make you a loan, with that relending program, to buy the interest of that heir who want to sell their interest, to buy their interest out. Now that's what Farm Service Agency as well, the air property relending program or the air property financing program. That's what Farm Service Agency. Now the other area that they have on the farm services, and I don't know if anyone is going to talk about, is going to be on their program side. That was on the financing side. They also have the program side, what I call risk management, particularly for those who are raising vegetables, who have an interest in becoming a micro-urban farmer, is the NAP program. But that's an insurance coverage for through USDA on the program side with Farm Service Agency. They have a lot of they also have the Conservation Reserve Program. If you have air property and it's been farmed right now and you decide that you want to put it into a Conservation Reserve Program, I don't know what it's paying per acre now. Again, FSA will be coming on in our discussion session to talk about that. But that's on the program side with Farm Service Agency. If you're dealing with, again, Conservation Reserve Program, putting your land into that and the maximum number of years. I'm not sure about that either. It may be 15 years now, maybe 10 years. But And they have specific requirements with that and practices that has to be employed or implemented during that process under the CRP program. Also, again, getting the farm number FSA, that's on the FSA side, with the program side, with Farm Service Agency and where you would go in and apply and get that farm number to become a micro-urban farmer. Now, this particular agency, and I'm at number 5 on the agenda, the USDA Rural Development. I know Steve Moses on, I saw him a few minutes ago, and I know he works statewide. USDA Rural Development, it is also noted in the American Rescue Plan as well as the Inflation Reduction Act as well. A lot of things, as these things will be rolled out, then how they will be applying program service delivery where it meets the challenge of addressing equity and equality with the underserved communities and individual is yet to be seen. And it is something that will provide, I think, great opportunities for these underserved communities in our rural area, such as the Elaine Marble water sewer will be a big issue, or is a big issue. You have heard a lot on the infrastructure part that deals with the fiber optic internet, making that available. And I have a whole bunch of questions about that, to what extent that's becoming a reality. And that's not just through USDA Rural Development. You have USDA Rural Development, and that's also been applied from the state level because various states have received that particular funding, which is going to be one of the questions that I would have had for the mayor as well as for the county judge. And that's through what they call Connect Arkansas. And Steve probably can talk more about that and how possibly there's a partnership between USDA Rural Development and Connect Arkansas, and where they get the funding directly from the federal government side on the entitlement dollar side, and then they provide that funding support to the rural communities, both the towns and to the county. And there's an application process on that. Let me back up. Also, I want to go back up to number 4 on farm financing and farm service agency. Farm Service Agency in the Inflation Reduction Act, amended from the American Rescue Plan, there are some major program service deliveries that will be taking place. And I will say under Farm Service Agency, they will possibly be offering some of the greatest opportunities to landowners, to individuals who have been farming and individuals who are farming now. And this is to any economically distressed farming operation. It is to any individuals that may have been discriminated against in the past. It is, and this is dealing with the debt write-off or debt write-down. Now, USDA has the statutory authority to do debt write-off. Now, that wasn't created as a part of this new act or as a part of this law, either under the American Rescue Plan, not under the Inflation Reduction Act itself. That has been, again, they've had that authority to do that over the years. What the law is basically doing, or the act is basically doing, is an attempt to address, again, some of the elements of the past, as well as the issue around equity and equality. And again, the equality issue goes back to the past, which has impact, a contingency impact, where we are at present as far as the economic distress farming operation, and particular farming operation, those individuals of color. So in that, which ones, and this is both for the direct loan program as well as for the guarantee loan, and where these program services will be made available on dealing with both the debt write down. It may be debt, I don't think that restructuring will be. That's something we've had some discussions on with some of the other groups or partner groups we work with, but whether it will be more of the debt write down, debt write off, and it is yet to be determined as to how USDA Farm Service Agency will implement that. Now, again, statutory authority does exist now with both the secretary at the national level, and to what extent that will move forward from the administrative procedure perspective is yet to be seen. But those areas, it does exist. That opportunity does exist, will be coming out. Even more so the reason, and understand, we go back some 20 years ago, 20 years plus ago, when a lot of these, some of these deficiencies and things that have occurred in the past was being addressed. That was through the Hispanic and women's class action that was recognized, the Native Americans class action that was also recognized, and as well as the African Americans class action that was recognized. The fact that there have been issues in the past as it had to do with equality, and the existence of that has resulted in where we have major deficiencies and where equity was not established, it does not exist because the same opportunity does not exist. So in the Inflation Reduction Act, as so amended from the American Rescue Plan, because there was a lawsuit filed on that, on dealing with writing all the debts off, both the guaranteed loan as well as the direct loans for farmers of color. And that was, so that was amended into the Inflation Reduction Act itself for all farmers that falls within the category or the definition area as either economically distressed type of farming operation and qualifying for either debt write down or debt being written off. And in certain cases, these farming operations and where that debt exists, it may be air property, because again, 25, 30, 40 years ago, it may be air property type of farming operation situation, which makes it even more important that that administrative authority is either given or established in that will allow you to apply for these services. If it's debt write down, debt write off, either one. Now, again, this is falling with the Farm Service Agency sides of it. And again, all of the regulations, again, which gets back into the administrative process as to how that's going to be implemented, is yet to be seen. But again, this is a public awareness type of meeting from an outreach standpoint, and it's very, very important that you understand from a public perspective, one, it does exist as an act or law now. Two, it will be implemented by these various agencies. And there's an enormous amount of resources that is involved will be involved in this implementation process with the agencies. Again, that's across the board. Farm Service Agency, USDA Rural Development, Natural Resources, and Conservation Services. I'm gonna move on fast forward here now. And Albert, I know my time is up almost. Back to USDA Rural Development. Again, all of them, we're going to move into our discussion session with the agency. We want to make sure their question and answer time period for those of you both that's online as well as those that's in person. On the USDA rural development, we have so many, and I know Steve is listening very closely, so many deficiencies in our rural community on infrastructure. We have water leaks everywhere. I mean, look at what's going on over in Jackson, Mississippi right now. Now, I know they do not qualify and they're not under the USDA rural program, but the fact that it's been highlighted in Jackson, Mississippi, and dealing with water quality, this exists in our rural areas right now. Water leaks, the water tanks and what has not been upgraded. You come out 40, 50-year-old type of systems that exist are longer than that need some serious upgrading. When you start to talk about equity and equality, now I know most of the smaller towns for a number of reasons. They do not have a lot of equity in their reserve accounts and the operational accounts that create the affordability to addressing these needs out here. Mississippi didn't have it. They are depending now upon major federal support to address the issue and what's going on in Mississippi. And I'm not picking on Mississippi, y'all. Mississippi is own. I'm just using it as an example. So I don't want y'all to say, why you keep talking about Mississippi? It's been in the news. It's been in the news recently. I think it really highlights, which is good, that as an issue in dealing with our natural resource, particularly dealing with water quality. And water quality, it has to be addressed. And I'm hopefully, as a result of the Inflation Reduction Act and the American Rescue Plan, that USDA rural development will look at that in these underserved areas and addressing this issue on all the deficiencies that exist in our rural communities on both our water and sewer systems, and a lot of reasons why that exists right now. You know, some of these sewer systems and water systems was built, and I'm only using this example, hypothetically, that they were built for a population of some 5,000 people, like 12,000 people. And now they have a population of 3,000 and 4,000 people. And they're still having to deal with maintaining and dealing with the upkeep of a system that was built for a population that was twice what exists right now. So there has to either be an approach taken to deal with either modification of those systems, but more than anything, the need to upgrade the lines. You know, you have some of the older lines that's in, and to address the issue regarding infrastructure, both modification as well as the ultimate overall upgrades of these systems and all these water leaks that exist in our area. I will say this. I know Elaine we've had discussion with Elaine regarding housing and a lot of our rural communities. That's an area, that's an issue that's concerned. How do we address all the deficiencies we have in housing and affordable housing, and address it in a manner where it's equal access to the type of resource that's necessary to address the deficiencies. You know, there are older homes. We have a property situation again with the houses, and where one individual is living there, family living there, they've been there for the past 25 years, and the other sisters and brothers may have moved out from the area or the whole out migration, but you have the estate situation now. Air property has to be addressed in those situations as well. I don't know of any self-help housing program, and Ms. Olson, I'm just going to mention this as a point. I don't know of any self-help housing program in Eastern Arkansas. I know there are some self-help housing programs in other parts of the state. I know how some of those self-help housing programs are being implemented in other parts of the state. I do not know where there's any self-help housing program that is being implemented in that's Eastern Arkansas, and I don't know about Mississippi, and I don't know about Tennessee. But what I do know is the self-help housing program does provide an opportunity for equity in dealing with upgrading the status, creating the opportunity for home ownership. It can be an equity issue for home ownership to be one approach to addressing home ownership with equity with the self-help housing program. And that's only one. That's under USDA rural development. They have the housing program. They have the community facilities program. A lot of needs in the rural communities, underserved communities. Again, equity, asset position, reserve account. Cities don't have it. Counties don't have it. I'm sure that if the judge was there and the mayor was there, they would attest to that. You know, they don't have the type of funding to make it. They don't get entitlement funding like New York City. They don't get entitlement funding like Little Rock. You have to have a certain population base in order to get that type of federal funding. The lack of having that, I'm hopeful that rural development both the national level and the Equity and Equality Commission will address that and how these deficiencies can be better addressed in our rural community. And we'll talk more about that. We'll be talking about it at our conference and hoping to have some resource people there that will talk about it, speaking from the national perspective, and some of the commissioners are those who are representing the Equity and Equality Commission. That again, another area, USDA Rural Development Community Facilities Grant Program. You have your grant program for housing. I know the amount has increased. Steve can give you the dollar amount of what that is for dealing with home renovation, health issues with housing. You have the loan program. I'm not sure if it's still $20,000, 1% interest rate, if it's more than that now with USDA rural development. Again, enormous resource. They have the business loan program, both the guarantee program and the direct loan program for dealing with new business, expansion of existing business and job creation. They have the technology dollars also. They have an energy program is another one. And that energy grant program, if you are modifying your utilities in a certain manner, that's going to lend themselves to addressing the whole issue around climate change and other areas. So again, a major resource agency is how you access those resources. You got to deal with rural development directly with their local offices and where those offices are located. Steve will talk more about that, and hopefully you all will have more questions. And I'm doing this in an effort to hopefully all of you who are both online and in the audience, that when our resource people come forward, that you will have your questions written down for anything that you want more specifics on regarding that agency, a program that I may have mentioned, and how we can better access or receive more benefits from the programs that exist with the various USDA agencies. Last one, and this is my wrap on it. I think I got 2 or 3 minutes left. The last one is on USDA NAS. I mean, now, you all may not hear that very much on the National Agricultural Statistics Service. Now, NAS is very, 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 very important. Getting counted. And when that information comes out, it's a driving force behind resources as well. Resources for agencies, particularly within USDA and other areas. It is very important, and I know, again, there'll be a part of the group discussion session, the interactive discussion that we're gonna move to next. But it's very important that you recognize that, and that our elected officials be a part of the campaign to encourage individual residents that when you receive this information in the mail, that it is completed and sent back in. You can also do it online, and they'll tell you about the process for doing that as well. But the National Agricultural Statistical Services is another agency, and it's a driving force behind what is reported out in our rural area. We are undercounted a lot of times. We are not a lot of time, most of the time. When I look at some of the census information as well, that's there. It doesn't match up. It just does not match up. So a very important agency, very important information, and it's imperative that we all make sure that we do what is required in getting the information back in, and that we are all counted as a part of USDA agricultural statistical records. I'm going to stop at that point. We have all of the agencies and everything that I've talked about. We have our resource agencies that are present, and I'm going to move to that point now, and where we will turn it over to, we'll have this discussion point now with the USDA agencies, and we're going to start with Natural Resource Conservation Services. And I think Mr. Alvin Pierce is on representing NRCS. Mr. Pierce, are you on?
Yes, sir, I am on.
Okay, Mr. Pierre, Mr. Pierre is, you're the outreach specialist for Natural Resources Conservation Services.
Yes, I'm the outreach. My name is Alvin Pierre. I'm the state outreach coordinator for the Natural Resource Conservation Service. My job is to reach customers that has never worked with NRCS before to better help them understand what's available through NRCS, through our programs, which are financial assistance as well as technical assistance. Through our technical assistance, we go out and talk to farmers about their potential issues that they may have, and they may not know at that time that there are financial programs that can assist them to resolve those problems. So during that visit, that's typically when I go into the spiel about the financial assistance that is available to help meet the needs of some of those concerns, resource concerns identified in those new beginning farmers and existing farmers operations.
Mr. Pierre, let me ask you this. Under the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as the American Rescue Plan, and again, you know, both those acts have recognized the underserved communities, and that needs to be addressed with either a new approach dealing with this whole issue around equity and equality. How do you see those acts implementing NRCS being able to do more as relates to your customer service base?
Well, when it comes to NRCS and looking at working with historically underserved producers, I think that what we are currently, we're more than 50% above what our normal threshold that has been set nationally of 5% for HU funding. So we've already surpassed that. So we're looking to even go higher than that 50% with the new streamlining that is potentially coming to help with through our programs. You will find that last year we had a climate smart with cover crops that we were able to inject special funding immediately to producers in that Delta region till those funds were expended. And it was strictly for cover crops. So we're looking to see that it's a potential for more programs of that nature to be potentially available once we look at how we can disperse funding.
Let me ask this. Now, I was talking earlier about the micro-urban farm basis of it, and I was, of course, you know, that's also built into each one of those acts. And you know, one glove definitely does not fit all. You know, when you start to talk about cover crops, conservation stewardship type of practices, and how that program works, and the financial benefits, you know, I'm talking about dollars now. You know, whenever you start to talk about the dollars that are connected to each one of the programs, then those program benefit dollars can be a determining factor whether you have cash flow or non-cash flow in the farming operation, profit or no profit. That same thing would apply to the micro-urban farmer, those small farming operations. Do you see a program that's going to fit better with that category of farming operations?
We are currently looking. There has been a subcommittee that has just been established to identify and help with the urban farmers, which will be looking at how we can better serve those communities because the urban side is growing tremendously in our current world and environment. And so they're in the process of standing up a committee that is looking directly at how we can better serve those customers and to look at how we need to look. If you remember a couple of years ago with the Keep It in the Family piece, we set up a special funding pool that would help that. So it hasn't been said yet, but I'm looking to see that there will potentially be something of that nature coming possibly in the future, but it has not been decided as of yet how it's going to be dispersed.
Well, let me just ask this as addition to that.
Dr. King, may I just interject something? We have a live audience here, and you, as far as the individuals here, are there any questions about urban farming we have people here, if you guys got some questions that you would like to ask about urban farming, Mr. Pierce is online, and he's the individual who does the hoop houses, seasonal high tone. His agency is responsible for getting them done in this region, in this area. And I want some of you guys' input. I know Dr. Olson had a question that she wanted to know, and you guys have taken the time to come out here and organizationally, we apologize for the COVID protocol for those who are here live in person. And I know it took some effort to come here. So I want you guys, if there are any questions about urban and microfarm, could you come up here, ma'am, please? Yeah, and if anybody else got any questions, I want you to just come up here. And while we're asking to come up here, is we need this microphone to where individuals in the audience that are not individuals in our in-person audience, in the virtual audience can hear you.
Thank you. I would just like to know about the grants that's available for the micro farming. It was said that you could use 1/2 acre or something like a garden or a truck patch. So I'd like to know more information about the grants that's made available.
Thank you, Mr.
Now, when you're talking grants, are you referring to applying for EQIP, the Environmental Quality Incentive Program? Or are you
Repeat that,
talking about,
please.
there's another side of the agency that's been stood up in DC that gives national grants for urban gardening as well.
Mr. Pierce, I don't believe she understands and knows about what cost share. You know, you're speaking Greek to her, okay? She's not familiar with that.
So within NRCS, the Environmental Quality Incentive Program is the program in which you apply for the practices such as micro irrigation, your high tunnel operation, looking at mulch or mulch, as well as an irrigation well for that high tunnel. It is that when you come in, you sign up. Dr. King spoke earlier about working with the Farm Service Agency to get a farm and track number. All of your eligibility is done through FSA first. And then would you start that application process with NRCS? Our applications are year round. You can apply for our programs, but there is a hard cutoff for each fiscal year, typically the 31st of January, when we start evaluating those applications for that cycle for funding.
So I may have missed, where will I get that application from?
Each office, each county typically there's an office located. If you're in Phillips County, it's located in the federal building at the post office on the second floor.
Thank you.
All right, we have another question. We got some hands up. We have a gentleman right here. Also like to let everyone know that Arkansas Land and Community Development Corporation will work with you in obtaining a farm number. I passed a pamphlet out that shows you about the process. And we will work with you in obtaining the farm number. And we will also work with you in obtaining the hoop house. We have another question from the audience right here.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm not a farmer, but I am concerned about something that was said earlier. You spoke about grant program for housing. You spoke about there was a loan program. You spoke about the water system. And all these things that I'm talking about is prevalent right here in Elaine. For instance, our water is brown. We don't have proper drainage. When it rains quite a bit, we can't flush our toilets. And we need some, need to know something about grants where individuals who desire to own their own properties. How do we go about doing that? And I know you mentioned about not getting an accurate number, and I'm sure that's true in Elaine. Do you have agencies that will come to Elaine and go from house to house to make sure that we do receive an accurate count? And I know this concerning federal dollars from the from whatever program we're getting the money from. Basically, that's what I want to know.
Dr. King,
Let me,
you-
Albert, let me say this. He had a lot of areas, and a lot of those areas, it's really like we almost need team USDA, one USDA to address some of those. Some of them would possibly fall with the NRCS and what it is with watersheds. I think there is an initiative now that's taking place that involves a watershed initiative. So the issue around drainage would have to be addressed. And I do want to come back to that. Again, that's not all going to be on NRCS. We will be moving down the line to other resource agencies that can talk more specifically regarding the other areas. I want to come back to the First Lady who gave reference to, and I know sometimes people say grant all the time, and versus when we say program, it is a program, okay? It is a program service delivery. The program area of that, if you're talking about the EQIP program, for the underserved population, if you want to call it grant and it costs $10,000, then yes, 90% of that $10,000 cost for EQIP program is a grant. It is money you do not pay back. It is program service delivery for the EQIP program. Now, when it comes to other program services, it may be dealing with practices. And that's why I asked about the practices for urban farm. It may be practices under the CSP program, conservation stewardship. If it's program service delivery, and where you, for a regular size farming operation, a farm number, I think the maximum you should be having up to $250,000. It may be more than that now. I don't know. It may be more under the Inflation Reduction Act or under the American Rescue Plan. But when we say program service delivery and how they're providing the services, it is a service, one, under contract, how that contract is implemented, and money you don't have to pay back if you put in an irrigation well, other type of practices that you will implement under that EQIP program. 100% says $100,000, then that means that $90,000 of that $100,000 will be money that you don't have to pay back. You want to call it a grant, but it's program service delivery under that program, man. The gentleman has given reference to housing. We're going to talk about that basically back with Steve Motion. I know we got to move forward, Abbott, on our time. If y'all will let me, what I want to do at this point, we're going to talk about the housing and the grant program on infrastructure and on the housing program, sir. So if you would bear with us, Abbott, I'm gonna move on. We'll come back.
Hey, Dr. King, I just want to say this. There are some NRCSers that is located at the facility there with Albert too. So if we need to, after this, have some conversation, there's potentially some of our agency people that are there. I apologize for not being able to be present because I had another meeting before this one.
Great, fantastic. Well, Mr. Pierce said that they have their NRCS resource people that are there in the audience, and this may be more afterward. We're going to try to keep on a time frame here. But I want to move on now to our next person, which the Farm Service Agency is going to be the next agency representative. Is that Mr. Hicks? Is he present?
Get it. Yeah, yes, he is, Dr. King. Here he is, right here. We're getting him on it. There he is.
Okay, would they move the camera? Mr. Hicks, how you doing? Glad to have you with us.
Just fine. How you doing, Dr. King? Can everybody hear me?
No, they can't hear
Okay,
you.
Can everybody hear me now?
There you go. There you go.
Can everybody hear me, Dr.
yeah,
King?
Mr. Hicks, yeah, I can hear you. I just want to make sure that you can hear us well. You heard me talk about Farm Service Agency, what it has to offer wise, and want you to talk some about from two perspectives. One, what you're doing now from an agency perspective. Two is how do you see Farm Service Agency? And trust me, there's a lot on Farm Service Agency side fitting within the American Rescue Plan and under the Inflation Reduction Act. There's a lot. You got 2,140 pages on dealing with the law itself. It'll probably be 20,000 when you get through dealing with the regulations for implementation of the law. So where are you right now on that?
Okay, right now, USDA, we got $3.1 billion in funding to assist distressed farmers and borrowers and making distressed borrowers a farm loan program, direct and guaranteed loan, potentially eligible for assistance. Excuse me. There's also a separate provision to provide financial assistance to farmers, ranchers, or forestry landowners who experience discrimination in USDA farm lending program. At this point, USDA is reviewing the legislation. There are several designs and process questions that USDA is considering as it works to implement these provisions passed by Congress. We also, at this point, can y'all still hear me?
Dr. Olson wanted to know, what does that mean for us?
Well, right now, they're still,
Would you repeat the question, what she said, where everybody can hear? Dr. Olson wanted to know, what does that mean for the audience?
Dr. Olson wants to know what does that mean for the actual customer itself here in E-Lane. Right now, USDA, they're still doing a lot of implementing. They're trying to figure out what's going to be the best way to implement this program. They haven't made a decision yet. There's several designs that they're looking at. They're working diligently to get this program implemented so that we can get it out to our growers and buyers and producers that have been financially distressed.
Dr.
Also-
Olson, Albert, let me say, Cedric, in addition to that $3.1 billion, the $3.1 billion, as I understand the law itself and some analysis that's been done and discussion we've had on this with Farmers Legal Action Group, they will be able to do certain adjustments in various categories. One is the direct loan program, as well as the loan guarantee program. That may be anything from a debt right and from an economically distressed farming operation, be you a farmer of color, white or a white farmer, either one. So economic distress farming operation would qualify for that $3.1 billion. Three categorical areas. It may be in real estate loans and operating loans. Is one of the two main types of FSA loans that's going to qualify under that particular area. Now, a big question is whether $3.1 billion is going to be a sufficient amount of resources, Dr. Olson, to address all of these deficiencies that exist with these farming operations, or economically distressed farming operations. But yes, it would be by way of both debt write-down. It could be with debt restructuring, partial debt write-down, could be a portion, it could be 100% debt write-off. But that's what that $3.1 billion represent. Am I right, Cedric?
Let me
Correct.
Yeah, she said.
Correct.
Let me just say, Dr. King, that I think Victor Zachary is long time work with you. The rest of us haven't. We don't know who to get to, where to go to. We sort of need to know when we say what's in it for us, what should we be doing, where should we be going, how should we be working with you? Do we need to form a group here that can work with you? Can work with the individuals? Where do we go? Where's the FSA office? We need real nitty gritty of how we can be involved. That makes sense?
Yes, it
Thank you.
does.
But I think you
Yes,
got
it
a lot
does.
of knowledge in your head. We gotta get it down to us.
I do agree. For the local FSA office, we're located at 617 Walnut Street in the federal building on the second floor in Helena, Arkansas. As for trying to figure out information, like I explained, we hadn't got anything disseminated down to us. They're still trying to figure out how they're going to implement this. All I can say is just keep calling, asking questions, and when we find out information, we'll disseminate it out to everyone that calls and asks those questions.
Cedric, I think you need to put a little clarity on that. While this is a new law itself under the Inflation Reduction Act, the actual administrative procedure and process already exists. You know, debt write down and debt write off. You have an administrative procedure and process for dealing with the debt write down and debt write off. There's an application process. Now, the point is whether you're going to use the same application process, making the same application to apply for these services under the Inflation Reduction Act. It will be an app, and I'm assuming this is an assumption possibility, but we don't want people to think that FSA know nothing about doing this, how to deal with debt write down, debt write off. We do know that there is an existing application process and you make that request for a debt write down. Now, how you determine the eligibility of that based on economic distress becomes another issue. How would that be defined within the context of the new law itself under the Inflation Reduction Act? I think that's really where we are right now. Definition itself, and there you already have some analysis in what you call a economic distress farming operation on qualifying even for certain loans or types of loans itself. So I don't know. So FSA has been doing this for a long time. Let me just say this for Farm Service Agency. Farm Service Agency have been dealing with debt services for a long, long time, since its existence, as a matter of fact. Once it became Farm Service Agency, one of the first things that they were doing was debt servicing. They were doing debt write-off, they were doing debt write-off and debt settlement with equity. So it's not a new thing, Ms. Olson. It is the agency itself, the way it will be implemented, and the determination of eligibility. What will all of the eligibility criteria be? We already know what the loan programs will be and what will fall. That is already listed. But the eligibility criteria for those who apply, I think that's really where we are, Cedric.
And like I explained, that's the process that they're trying to determine right now. What are the eligibility process going to be? How is it going to be implemented? Yes, we do have a debt write-off current in progress right now, but when it comes to the IRA, they hadn't decided how it's going to be implemented. How is it going to affect how the debt write-off is going to be considered?
Okay. Are there any more questions from the audience concerning Farm Service Agency? Does anyone else have any additional questions from the audience for Farm Service Agency? Yeah. You can. I need you to come here, please. You need to come over here. You can just walk right through. Watch the wire. Watch the wire.
What's
I need you to look right there because they're going to get you online. We want to see. We want everybody to see that face.
That's all right. That's all right. What I'm confused about. You talk about debt relief. Did I hear that?
Yes, you did.
Okay, I heard that. Now, in our area, Black farmers make up less than 1% of all the farmers in this area. So if you're gonna put out $3.8 billion and it's gonna be debt relief, who's gonna receive this money? Will it be a Black farmer or will it be a white farmer? I'm curious.
Well, it will
excuse me, because right now, all of the lucrativeness is going to white farmers. And that's the problem. Back from 1919, when my family land was taken, there are other families whose land was taken or stolen, and they made plenty of money off this property. And now they have access to $3.8 billion, and they're going to get 99% of that. So it just doesn't seem fair to me.
Let me I'll go back to this, Cedric, and Cedric, help me out on this if I'm if I don't have it quite right. But let me give a little additional clarity to that. As I said before, this is not new for FSA. Farm Service Agency have had specific criteria with statutory authority from administrative perspective on all of these program areas. Economic distress being one of the factors. Now, a lot of the farmers you're talking about definitely would not fall within that category as being economic distress. Another part from a statutory regulation perspective under the farm and farm size, if an individual's gross revenue is more than I think it's 999,000 less than if it's $1 million or more, you're not going to qualify. Okay, and you don't qualify under most of the servicing programs with FSA. Am I right, Cedric, on that dollar figure? Is a 9.9?
999,000.
Right, so 999,000. So that's a particular categorical area that they have is for eligibility that already exists within USDA on some of its program side. If you're dealing with the Farm Service Agency, 900, whatever you just said on that. So that's going to, and I do understand what you're saying. 10% of the population, and this is just a reality, roughly 10% of the population owns or controls 95% of the overall agricultural operation that exists in this country. So that's a natural fact. Those individuals, that 1% or less than 1%, now it may be that 80% of those individuals qualify as economic distress farming operation, and they may qualify under other areas as so determined in the implementation process under the Inflation Reduction Act, because there'll be more than just one category. There is more than one category, and it is so dealt with from regulation perspective, then I'm sure there will be additional clarity on that, particularly if you are a farmer or landowner of color. As being part of the justification, but you do not have to be a farmer or landowner of color, but you do have to meet certain eligibility criteria in order to get certain services or benefit of program services from Farm Service Agency. Cedric, you may give more clarity on that if I missed something.
Doc, I think you got it all. Like you stressed, they're not looking at color, gender, anything, nationality. They're looking at if you're distress borrower within the farm loan program, you've had hard times, and they're looking at how they're going to implement that program the best, make sure everybody gets a fair treatment on getting everything taken care of in stressful times.
All right, do we have any more questions from the audience for Farm Service Agency? Cedric said that him and there are some additional people. I see Ms. Cheryl Massey and Miss Natasha. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You have a person that has their hand up. What's that, Miss Paulette?
Yes.
Okay, Miss Paulette has her hand up. She's online, Albert. Need to be recognized.
Okay, there she is.
She has a question.
Hi, my question is, do these programs also help not-for-profit farms and ranchers, or it has to be for profit only?
There is nothing in the area, if you're saying as far as the loan is concerned, or if you're talking about program services, NRCS program services are available if it's a farm. One, if they have the land, they show control ownership of the land, and it qualifies as a farm, then you can apply for either a loan or program services with NRCS. So it would qualify, yes.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else online, Mike? Would you read the question, Mike? Need you to read it.
Yes,
You got to speak into it.
yes, there's a question, I think it's about NRCS. They're asking, are cattle ranchers eligible for the climate smart cover crop to build soil nutrient level?
Ask this.
I get to Mr. Beard.
That question goes to Mr. Perry, NRCS.
Ms. Pear, are you there? If not, Dr. King, would you?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question.
The question is,
Mr. Perry, the question was does cattle operation and farmers, ranchers, qualify for the program services that you discussed?
Yes,
Cover crops and things of that nature.
it depends. It depends on the operation. So that's going to be identified based on the land use and the resource concerns being addressed in that area.
But
And what type of management style they have.
But Mr. Pitt, now tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking when they said I think his question may be more or less that does NRCS have programs that can benefit the livestock producers and ranchers? And
Yes, yes.
That is yes.
That is yes.
That is yes. The other, I know he gave reference to cover crops. While we would not be dealing with cover crops and dealing with pasture land, but there are specific livestock programs that may be a part of the EQIP that deals with rebuilding a particular pasture base with grasses, the self-watering system for the irrigation system is concerned, whether it's an irrigation on farm side, on the rancher side, and maybe putting a well in to have a automatic watering system for the livestock operation. And of course, you have the pasture management and the cross fencing that comes into effect as well, right?
That's correct, but it's going to be one of those situations where that's where we'll look at that whole management style, looking at that operation, what they're currently doing, and identify what's available and what's going to be the best practices to alleviate whatever the resource concern is on that land.
To that particular question, let me just say this to the general audience. Our understanding of NRCS, and in particular that's in the Inflation Reduction Act program, NRCS has program services for any type of farming operation that exists. If you're a forestry farming operation, if you are a rancher operation, if you're a vegetable crop operation, if you're a row crop operation, particularly under the smart agriculture production practices, that's a part of some of the new acts. So they have services for any farming business operation that exists. They have a program service for it. And I apologize for that. It's not just row crop, it's not just micro-urban farming, it is forestry, it is ranching, it's across the board. They got a program service delivery for you.
Right, and that's one of the reasons that I state resource concern and land use. Because the practices are identified based off the land use as well as what resource concerns we are addressing through those practices that you identified.
there was another question, yes, it was directed to Mr. Pierre. what are some things that make an application more attractive to the NRCS?
Mr. Pierce, did you
When
hear
it
him?
comes- Yes, when it comes to when we look at an application, we're looking at what resource concerns you have on that operation and what practices you're looking at installing. When that goes into the system, CART identifies and gives it a score. It gives it a score. It's not one of the system now tallies it based off what it is. And we're looking at what the producer wants to do and address and identifying with them what they can address on the other side. So you're bringing all that together. But ultimately, the producer decides which practices they want to put on that farm, which that's what's put into the system for that particular ranking.
Mr. Mayor, I think you may want to mention also, they do have, one, you're looking at some set-aside program for the underserved population. And the other is that, when you are filling out your application for NRCS program services, there are certain things you should identify and what gives you some more priority as well. One, if you're a veteran, one, if you're a minority, be Hispanic,
Well, with this
African
new,
American.
Dr. King, with this new CART system, just as you said, with that application, once they check on their HU and they identify, that system identifies all of when we put the practices in that they're looking at, it identifies and scores it based on the social disadvantaged funding pool, the strike force funding pool, regular equip. It does them all sequentially at the same time. And so it's a different score given to each actual funding category.
But it's also very important when you're making that application out that you check those categories so you
Absolutely.
know it's important that you do the categorical area so that you get those added assessment of the positive aspect of that type of assessment with that system.
And you want to ask for a copy of which funding categories that you did actually apply for.
Right. Okay.
Dr.
We're going to
King.
go on now to we're going to move over to USDA Rural Development's next. Steve Mosier. Mr. Mosier, I see you on.
Yes, Dr. King, it's always great to be part of your forums. It's always a pleasure to work with Arkansas Land and Community Development Agency. First of all, I'm Steve Mosier. I work for the national office out of Washington, D.C. I cover 12 states in the South, plus Puerto Rico and Virgin Islands. I do special projects and I assist with outreach, and I assist with helping the state directors of those 12 states and those 2 territories. I guess to start out at the beginning is that our organization is set up where we have area offices, and the area office closest to Elaine area, Arkansas County, is out of our Forest City office. Kathy Harris is area director, and I put her information in the chat along with our 2 program directors, Tim Smith and Cheryl Ivy, and our state director, Jill Floyd. Their information is all in the chat. Kathy Harris's office is where you would go to apply. Her address is 4401 North Walnut Street, and that is in Forest City, Arkansas. So I kind of wanted to hit that first. In reference to, you covered a lot of things, Dr. King, earlier, and I was jotting them all down, things I probably needed to talk about. In reference to equity, I'm working on 2 projects. One is with Director Floyd in Arkansas. It's called the Rural Development Equity Project. It's where 10 communities in Arkansas that were most underserved. And what we're doing, we're identifying those areas. We are setting up partnerships with other organizations, if they be educational institutions, public, private institutions, nonprofits, foundations, and so forth. And then we are going to, the area directors will be having meetings in those areas. And they will be actually trying to share how you apply for resources and what resources are available. The other program that I've been working on from the national office level is the Rural Partners Network. Actually, I've been working in the state of Mississippi, just across the line from Helena. And there are 3 community networks over there that we're working with. And what that is about is trying to bring awareness of all federal programs to rural communities that are underserved. And we are also, I've found working with those communities that there needs to be a national matrix of all programs that are available through the federal program. And I am trying to get that accomplished. Hopefully before I retire, I can get that done. But those are 2 projects that we're doing around equity. In relationship to the American Rescue Plan, there was an enhanced amount of money in single family housing direct program. You'd have to ask Cheryl Ivey exactly how much money came through the National Rescue Plan. In the past, Arkansas has always had plenty of money. However, we have not loaned as much over in East Arkansas, and we would like to enhance that. The other program you talked about was Inflation Reduction Act. There is quite a bit of money in that under the Climate for Rural Energy for America program, and that is for profit businesses to either replace existing energy consuming devices such as grain bin dryers or chicken house incubators and things like that. Also, there is a lot of money, and you'd have to ask Tim Smith exactly how much is available through the Clean Drinking Water and Safe Infrastructure for Sewer Projects. But there is money through the Inflation Reduction Act. The other programs that actually help farmers through USDA Rural Development is a value-added grant program, which is a program that helps farmers capture more consumer dollars by adding value and further processing of their agriculture products. We also have a 1% labor housing loan program, and that is for farm laborers that work on farms that need housing. We can loan to the farmer a 1% loan for 33 years to provide decent, safe, and sanitary housing for labor, for their laborers. And then the other program that really applies to farmers is that Rural Energy for America program that I mentioned. You mentioned earlier also, Dr. King, about the self-help program. I've been around 39 years, and I was very involved in self-help housing, especially over in the western part of the state. I know a little bit about the history of self-help housing in the eastern part of the state. There used to be one down in Chico County, and there also used to be one just outside of Helena. And that was back in the early 90s, I recall. Both of those programs were vital and worked for many years, but they had a problem with two things. First of all was credit issues for some of the clientele. They were having an issue where they were facing not being able to meet the credit criteria. The other was getting families to actually contribute in the labor provision of those programs. In those programs, you have the actual applicant has to be involved in 65% of the task in building that home. Now, I'm a huge proponent of self-help housing. I think it is a fantastic program. It helps families build equity by saving in the cost of labor and also through bulk purchasing of material. The other thing that I think that self-help housing adds more than anything else is it helps individuals be exposed to different construction segments of building a home. And I've seen people go through that program as an applicant, and they find out that, yes, I like a particular aspect of construction. I want to be a bricklayer. I want to be an electrician. I want to be a plumber. I want to do dirt work. So there's a lot of opportunities that are available through the self-help program. And you need to get with Cheryl Ivy. If there is a nonprofit that is interested in applying to become a self-help grantee, she can help you get with the regional organization that helps you put an application together. The lady's name is Rebecca Reynolds. She is with Dixie. I'm trying to think of it now. Anyhow, it's out of Hugo, Oklahoma, and they will help you with an application process. The only self-help program that is close to East Arkansas is Susan Forte. She is working on a self-help housing program kind of southeast Little Rock. That's not exactly in East Arkansas, but it's at least in that direction. So that is one program that is out there. You know, rural development does rural housing, it does rural business, and it does rural utilities. I know in East Arkansas, a huge issue that is needed is broadband. We have the Reconnect program that we recently took applications on. There'll be another round of Reconnect next year to help with broadband. We have other broadband programs. And you're absolutely correct, Dr. King. Most of the water and sewer projects that rural development has financed over the last 30, 40 years were built early in that time frame. And a lot of them are failing. And it's a huge problem nationwide. So in a lot of rural communities, and I try to help national office understand this, is we have lost population. And as we lost population, we lost users. And when we lose users, then we lose revenue. And when we lose revenue, then they can't put as much money into the reserve accounts that need to be put in to maintain these systems. So that is a huge problem, and it is going to get bigger and bigger. And I'm glad that both the Inflation Reduction Act and the American Rescue Plan is at least making some attempt to addressing those issues. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. I know I covered an awful lot of information, but I was jotting down the information that I thought you wanted me to cover today. So I hope I did that.
Yes. Tell who you are.
Yes, I'm Victor Zachary, and I have
Thank
a
you,
question
Albert.
concerning agribusiness.
Hello, Victor.
Do you have
We talked the other day on the phone.
do you have any agribusiness funds for farmers markets, processing plants?
Yes. That falls under the community facility program. You and I talked the other day when I was going to Helena. But it falls under community facility program, and we can finance farmers markets. And the community facility program grant portion is based on the area to be served median household income. And you'll have to get with Ms. Harris. She can look up those numbers and tell you, depending on where you want to put that farmer's market, the area that it could serve and what the grant eligibility would be. But yes, we can finance on a community facility program.
Thank you.
It's good to see you in person.
Steve, you might
Yes,
want
sir.
You might want to put a little clarity on that farmers market side. Now, the funding that they provide for farmers market, that is, I mean, it's for what, municipalities and nonprofit community-based organizations.
That's correct.
The farmers market financing under community facilities under the grant program is not for individual farmers that may want to put in a farmers market.
That is correct, Dr. King. Now, if there's a farmer that is wanting to capture more consumer dollars, then that individual can apply through the value-added grant program.
Exactly.
And that And the value added grant program, I want to make sure I'm clear on this, is not for land, is not for equipment. It is for feasibility studies, for packaging and labeling and advertisement. And it's a 50-50 match program. So that means the farmer puts in 50% and USDA puts up 50%. And usually the cap on that's about 100,000.
Which is two different programs, added value being one, farmers market being the other program.
Yeah, farmers market would fall under community facility.
Right.
Value added falls under the business program. And Tim Smith is a person to talk to on both of those, or going through Kathy Harris.
Steve, one other point. I know you gave reference to the self-help housing, and under the Inflation Reduction, there seems to be some flexibility in that on dealing with equity and equality. You said that one of the big challenges, the barriers in implementing self-help projects was credit issues.
Yes, sir.
Has rural development considered, is there enough flexibility in the new act that would allow it to finance what they used to do some years ago on cooperative housing programs, where a group comes together, they create a housing cooperative with X number of individuals on the list that will be tenants as a part of that cooperative housing. Is that something? And definitely, of course, in dealing with an appreciation process on how the property is managed as a cooperative, it creates a equity position within that community itself from a cooperative standpoint. Is there enough flexibility in it? And I know you have cooperative funding. Don't get me wrong. I know you have funding for cooperatives, one, but I have not seen any emphasis put on the application of cooperatives. And you have like Woodruff Cooperative, electrical cooperative, and these major cooperatives, but to deal with the issue of housing and where we have major deficiencies in our rural areas, instead of small town like Elaine, and you have a lot of air property situations that may exist in certain situations as well on the housing, that they come together and create a cooperative to build X amount of houses. Do you have enough to do that?
We do have a program where they've done some cooperative housing development. It's it's under the labor housing program. And I tell you who's an expert. We have an expert in Arkansas that knows more about labor housing than probably anybody in the nation, is Billy Holland. Billy's located up at Jonesboro, and he has made a tremendous amount of labor housing loans.
No.
Labor housing loans have got two things. You can make them a single family, or you can do a cooperative facility. Now, we used to have one financed down at Hope that was for migrant workers that came through to work on farms. And some of those people that stayed in that facility, and it was kind of like an apartment complex, they worked on farms year round, so they stayed there year round, where other individuals came in and out of that complex, and it was a cooperative. And that's about all I know about it, Dr. King. I never worked that program.
Yeah,
I hope that answers your question.
Well, no, I'm not speaking about it from a farm labor perspective. I'm speaking about a cooperative from individual ownership perspective. As you know, within the context of cooperative, you can establish a cooperative, individuals can, and so they have either the patronage membership to that cooperative, or they may have dividend membership to the cooperatives. From a stock perspective. So if a community say, well, we're creating this housing cooperative for Elaine, and we have these many individuals that we know, just like if I built an apartment duplex or a subdivision like we've done over in the West Helena area, that's rental property, except this will be a cooperative, and the cooperative provides the benefit of services of availability of housing, and they pay accordingly, to receive the benefit of that service. You wouldn't call it, I'm not talking about your 515 program on the rental housing. I'm talking about a cooperative, and they used to do them years ago. I'm talking about a cooperative, just like a Woodruff Electric Cooperative, which I'm a member of, and I get electrical services, okay? And I pay for those services, just as I do with energy. So as a housing cooperative, then I get the benefit of being a resident in this cooperative housing community, and I pay the amount of what the rental payment would be. The only difference is, in say the equity basis of it, you may have it at the end of the year, you get a dividend payment, as a patron's dividend, or stock interest dividend, or you would have it as, again, that entity, and of course you can rent it to another person. If the person moves out, then you rent it to another member that may be on the waiting list to receive the benefit of that service. So I'm saying that type of cooperative, not a labor house. Labor houses are normally owned by the farm, the ones qualifying being the farm operators, those big corporate farm units. Not that you are going to be a laborer on that farm that's linked to a farming operation. A cooperative started by a small town, started by the city of Elaine, with the availability of a population needs that need to be addressed.
I understand what you're saying, Dr. King, and if projects were financed like that in the past, it was before I went to work for the agency. So I'm not familiar with that. And I've been around a long time, as you know, 39 years. But I would ask those questions to Cheryl Ivey, and she could go through the Housing National Office to see if that's a potential possibility. I think it has great potential. I think what you're summarizing would be a great way to address housing needs in a lot of small rural communities. Because we do have a tremendous amount of challenges in rural communities, everything from water and waste to broadband to housing.
Right. Okay, we're going to move on now, and I apologize for coming back. I'm moving in. We're coming to the end of this session, people. It's now 3:57, and we're down to our last one, which is NAS, USDA, National Agricultural Statistical Service, and we have Ms. Bishop, Jill Bishop. Are you there?
Yes, sir. I am here. Can everybody hear me? All right. So I am.
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm just gonna make a few points because I know it is wrap-up time. So I am Jill Bishop, Deputy Regional Director for the Delta Regional Office of National Agricultural Statistics Service. We serve Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. So first, thank y'all so much for having me. But these are the points I want to make. We have talked about so much here, a lot of opportunity. The National Agricultural Statistics Service is a small agency, but we set all of the official crop and livestock estimates for the USDA, for the Department of Ag. The other thing that we do is make sure all of the markets run pure, right? We make sure that the information goes out at the same time for everyone, right? So that demand and supply can truly be what sets the price for commodities and not some other entity that can use it for their values, all right? Or for their benefit. That is in general what we do. Now, the importance of this is two things. Number one, for NASA's definition, to be a farmer, you have to make $1,000 in sales or the potential to make $1,000 in sales. So many people that are just backyard gardeners and things of that nature, you can make $1,000 in sales relatively easy or have the potential, right? Especially in today's economic times where everything's so expensive, right? So the other thing about that is NAS does the agricultural census. This is huge because the agricultural census is the backbone to a lot of these programs that are being funded by NRCS and FSA that we have been talking about, right? It is the beginning to the money cycle starting, right? But in order for politicians and everybody to know where money needs to go, people have to tell them what's going on in their community. So they have to actually answer the census, right? So when that 36-page census comes in your mail and you just look at it and throw it away, you are doing yourself and your community a disservice, right? Because you're not helping yourself. So we get into these particular situations where we're talking about all of these funding opportunities, but yet that money pot is not available in your county because your county did not fill out the census. In 2017, Phillips County said that they had 361 farmers. It also said that only 52 of those were Black or African American. Guess what? Somebody didn't report. A whole lot of somebodies didn't report. So in the end of the day, when FSA is pulling out their pot of monies to give out these monies, or when NRCS is trying to do their cost sharing grants, guess who gets the short end of the stick? Because we did not report. So this is still the federal government. In order for you to receive all of these wonderful grant monies and subsidies, you gotta do something. You gotta report. You gotta go to the office. You gotta make yourself known. We're not gonna come and find you. We don't have the money to do things. So I'm sorry if I'm keeping it a little too real, but that's just the reality. All right, but if you do your part, there are programs there to help you. Our goal is to help you. We don't want you living in food deserts and impoverished communities. We want to help, but you have to do your part and live yourself up. All right, that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right, put it back on dock and let's close it out.
let me just mention also, Albert, on that, and what Ms. Bishop was giving reference to on the National Ad Statistical Services, Mr. Pierre gave reference to targeting certain programs such as Strike Force, which means they have set aside programs and set aside dollars for the population, be it farmers of color, underserved segments of the population. If the numbers are not there, then I mean it's going to either be fewer dollars in those programs on set aside or no dollars in those programs on set aside. And it's not just for NRCS, the same thing would apply in other program services too. I want to thank all of those who participated in the summit. I've enjoyed it. Again, a little bit different this time, what I was calling more, supposed to have been a roundtable type of discussion with all of our presenters and all of our resource agencies. I do want to do this on October the 28th. October the 28th, we will have our 42nd annual conference and membership meeting for Arkansas Land and Farm Development Corporation. Again, our 42nd annual conference and membership meeting. It will be held in Fargo, Arkansas. It will be in person, where people can attend in person, but it will be limited on the in-person participation. So we are going to be urging early registration for all of those who want to participate and be a part of the event by being there in person. We will have both national and state representatives there that will serve as resource individuals to address a lot of the things that we have talked about some here today to a certain extent. By that time, the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as the American Rescue Plan, they should have a lot more specifics within the next 30 days or so. I must say that. While we will be doing it for the first time since 2019 in person. Again, it will be in person at the Fargo site, our 42nd annual conference and membership meeting, but we will offer it virtually as well. There's a certain thing about being in person to me, and plus to being able to actually communicate with people in a different manner. We will have those direct question and answer period. We'll have a panel discussion, and we'll have both the opening morning speaker and a luncheon speaker. This conference is being designed to further address those issues, many issues that we talked about today, and also to roll out more specifically how the Inflation Reduction Act can benefit you directly with the agencies, particular Farm Service Agency. There's also one other area that I did not talk about in detail. This will not be through because we didn't have anyone to speak to it from that perspective. But it would be primarily now with Farm Service Agency. There is up to a $500,000. This is a budgetary dollar figure. There's 3.7 billion also. That's a part of the Inflation Reduction Act. That's a part of discrimination practices if that can be proved by individuals who were farming, who did farm prior to 2020 and 2021. Again, discrimination payments for those who show and know that they have been discriminated against. Farmers of color, and this is specifically addressing the issue around farmers of color. Up to $500,000, I think, is the maximum amount that's a part of that particular program that's in the Inflation Reduction Act. We will have a lot more details on that during our conference. Hopefully to have representatives there that will talk about that with the National Office of Civil Rights, as well as with the National Policy Center. Again, that's all that I have. I really appreciate all of our resource people that participated and all of those who participated both in person and online. Albert, I'm turning it back over to you, man.
Okay, thank you, Dr. King. I would like to personally thank everyone for coming out. And then we have one more resource provider. We're going to close it out. We would, from NRCS, Mike, you can close this out. Again, thank everyone for coming.